Just a few seconds left here, 7, 6 left. Freiberg goes for the kill, he's going to pick it up. If Just Exist survives, he's going to win the round, there's no time. Oh my god, Freiberg, are you kidding me? They win the round because of it. And now Freiberg is going to be walking around.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of What Will Thorin Say Next, starring Richard Lewis, formerly of Breitbart, Thorin of course, and Sam, the producer. You can see Duncan still rocking the fine moustache, and we finally got to do a fucking show. It's been a while, mate. In fact, it's been that long. The last time we did a show, we were wondering who was going to be Esports Journalist of the Year.
And it was,
the
whole time.
It
was me all along, Austin. It was me all along.
I'm not bitter about that. Obviously, I was glad that somebody whose work I respect actually won it, because there was some names on that list that were a little bit ropey.
Sure, yeah.
But I did think the reaction was interesting. By people sort of saying, like, you're not a journalist all of a sudden.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah,
it's all like people don't understand that investigative journalism is just a type of journalism. Another type of journalism, for example, would be a player profile or history, right? The
mad thing is, these people presumably must think that, like, Christopher Hitchens, Norman Mailer just weren't journalists, apparently.
Journalists, no.
Unless early on in their career they wrote for a newspaper. That's the only time they were journalists, apparently.
Yeah, because Christopher Hitchens didn't infiltrate a sex ring in his early career. All of his work is void.
I will say, though, I did really appreciate, though, the ones who were sort of like, their whole tack was like, it's obvious corruption and insider politics because my friend should have won, which is like, it's always the lack of self-awareness that makes me the most,
Right, because I got a cold at the fucking moment, mate. By the way, I do appreciate the low-key comparison of yourself to Christopher Hitchens. Always love it. But like, I'm just so tired of it now. Like, and I'm ill. I literally have got no filter today. This show probably to be raw. It's probably me who's going to get time stamped and not you for a fucking change. I'll be on standby for that, Sam. Protect what's left of my career, please. But I just thought these new people, right, that have come into esports, and yet, they've been here 1 year, 2 years. People like me and you were in the fucking trenches in like 2002, 2003, 2004, laying the bedrock, right? Like, now that it's been made, that people, have seen all this fantastic talent, there's money, there's profit. People now finally believe in the evangelical we were preaching to 50 people in a fucking warehouse, like in an I-series or something. And they're having these wonderful lives. And now that they're doing it, now that they can make a living out of it, they say people like me and you just shouldn't be allowed to make a living out of it, off the thing we built. And where it gets really frustrating is we allow these people to come in and lie about their credentials and lie about their experience with esports because they think because they had a fucking Nintendo when they were 8 years old, they know about the fucking, esports scene. And we say nothing about that. Like, I don't tweet about these people every day. I've had a few jibes at consultants because I think consultants genuinely harm the industry, but I've said nothing about this new breed of esports lawyer that are lying through their fucking teeth. I've said nothing about this new breed of esports journalist who, I'm all about the esports. Me, well, how long have you known about esports for then? Just recent. How many games did you play? How many scenes you involved in? Just the one that made me the most welcome when I first installed the game 6 months ago. Who are you to fucking say anything about anyone who should win awards, who should have jobs? Now, they might not like the shit you say, right? Like on your Twitter, for example. But if you get... Right, and look, I don't agree with everything that you say or retweet. I'm not a fucking sheep. We're not joined at the fucking hip. We don't completely overlap. I mean, our political opinions are like a Venn diagram. It's not a fucking, it's not a circle within a circle, is it? Right? But what has that got to do with an assessment of your work or contribution to esports over your long career? You're getting the Lovecraft treatment.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You know, and it just blows my fucking mind. I was doing interviews with mainstream media companies telling people esports was going to be big, while they were just watching from the sidelines. Oh, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get involved because, maybe I can't make a living from it. I slept on fucking couches, right, to tell people how great esports is and to help players out and to build this fucking scene. What, and I don't get a job now because you don't like a fucking tweet? Like, how fucking dare you say someone doesn't deserve to win an award and it should go to one of your friends who's got less tenure than you?
Yeah. Oh, what was great about that, by the way, was the sheer irony that if you know my backstory, I'm someone who worked in esports as long as anyone. There might be a couple of people who did a couple of years more. I'm not sure, though. As long as anyone. And I actually made this joke on the last show, I believe. The only thing I had ever actually won was your community awards that you did when you worked at Cadred. That was it. I'd never even been, I made a shot at this in my acceptance speech. I was never nominated for a single one of those Turtle Entertainment Esports Awards. I was in, when you mentioned earlier, there's a few names on that list. That's the way all awards are, There's always going to be someone on there who's never going to win, but the idea is you give them a little bit of shine just by putting them on the list, they can say I was nominated, I never even got nominated, ever. And by the way, not because I didn't do any work, it was pure industry politics. There's people there. Some of them, unfortunately, at the time were literally like my nemesis of the world, who just decided, fuck this guy. I'm in charge of this panel. I don't think I'll be including him, which, okay, I get it. But think of the irony of this. So after all that, right, eventually, solid 16 years into my career, I win an award, that Justice for Esports Journalist of the Year, Lots of metrics by which, again, you could disagree, but lots of metrics by which you could say, I did a lot of content, etc., all sorts of different types. And people don't just say, you shouldn't have won, which is, their opinion. They're just like, you're not even a journalist. Yeah. And in fact, because of tweets, best one is because of retweets. Because of retweets, you should actually not even be allowed to work.
Let me tell you how insane it was. Because again, the gloves are off tonight. I don't give a fuck. Let me tell people watching the podcast right now how insane it was way back in the day. Give you an idea of the politics and the bullshit that went on when these ESL awards were going around. So first of all, I got nominated one year, and then because of a beef with somebody, a group of people further up the food chain, they accused me of plagiarism, right? Which wasn't true. I hadn't plagiarized anything. I did an article over at Gottfrag, which was original investigation, which expanded on a news story that had been published by Cadred, which at the time I didn't then work at. And because of this, I just got fucking erased. Like Joseph Stalin had my fucking photo album. I was on the list of nominations. I was up for the award. Then a bunch of people went and said, hang on, he's ripped off fucking Cadred over there, that Gottfrag scumbag. He better not be on that shortlist. And when you look at the shortlist, I'm just gone. There's just some other cunt wearing my t-shirt. Like, who the fuck's that? That isn't me. I should have won that award. And then here's the other fucking brilliant one that happened way back then in the ESL awards. Right, so because Turtle Entertainment Awards, ESL, it's all the same shit, right? Carmack used to work over at SK, which is where Duncan took over, right? And because ESL wanted to, like, they'd already done a deal, like, to hire him from SK. It was all agreed. And Carmack went into this awards ceremony, like, basically nominated for some article he wrote. I think it was the Beggars Be Kings or Beggars Will Be Kings article.
Yeah. It wasn't a great piece, by the way.
No. Like, one of his worst pieces, probably, actually. But because ESL wanted to said we're hiring the journalist of the year, mysteriously he just won it, and then it was like, oh look, SK Gaming's Carmack has won the ESL award. By the way, ESL are hiring Carmack. It was fucking nonsense back then. It was absolute nonsense. Meritocracy didn't enter into it. I've told this story many times, but it bears repeating. Back when it was a public award, purely a public vote, I was nominated one year for an article. It was a 3,500 word critical assessment of why there was a difference in attitudes between UK and European players when it came to aptitude and application in Counter-Strike, right? I lost that award to a guy who did 600 words, a 600-word article published on a German website called Spawn, Pro Gamer or Pro Rapper, right? And the reason for this was because he had heard that Spawn had like bought like, I don't know, DJ Pro or something and installed it on his fucking PC and had made a fucking song that he said might release this as a single. The journalist had never met Spawn, never talked to Spawn, didn't understand Counter-Strike barely, didn't understand music or hip-hop production, just wrote an article going, wouldn't it be awesome if Spawn was a big rapper one day? And everyone went, yeah, it's got Spawn in the title. Fucking upvote that shit. And that was that. No award for you, Richard. Thanks very much for fucking playing. It was garbage back then. It was garbage back then. And then finally, like, people like me and Duncan get a little bit of shine after a lifelong of indentured fucking servitude to the cruel fucking master that is esports, right? Like, finally, we get a little bit of shine. Do you know how many fucking grotesque dinosaurs we had to wait to just fucking ascend into the status of millionaire just to get some fucking shine on us, dude?
Yeah, Richard, the maddest thing is, actually, I think the number one factor that helped our careers wasn't actually people like quitting outright. You know, it was people getting promoted. The biggest cunts got promoted so high they didn't care anymore and they didn't bother fucking with you. So at that point, with a new breed of people who were just normal people, because obviously that was the other thing. As esports got bigger, you got less nutters involved. You got vaguely normal people. Now you could actually operate like a normal industry.
Yeah, so like that was it. It was literally, you know, I'm not saying I didn't burn bridges. I'm not saying I weren't difficult.
To be fair, I think we burned a lot of bridges. You know?
Yeah, we did.
Like that just used to be the daily policy back then.
Yeah, true. Back then, I was a fucking Counter-Strike source journalist with like 3,000 Twitter followers. No one knew who the fuck I was, and I'd be like, "Hang on, this industry thing is bad," and he would just get these huge like titanic forces, like evil geniuses. I'm still blocked by evil geniuses to this day. Like, you know, like on Twitter, they would just be like, "No, this guy's pure evil. He's scum. He's dirty." I'm like, "But you're doing the dishonest thing. You're doing the dishonest thing." Completely wrecked. No jobs. People told me he'll never be able to go on camera. His writing's not that good. He'll never do anything meaningful. He's just an attention whore. You know, you fucking name it. I've butted heads with them all. And the only time I got the space to just be given an opportunity, right, was after these guys were like, "Oh, well, we're all millionaires now. See, you're not even worth pissing on anymore. You're not even worth pissing on anymore. You can have it. You can have esports," you know? Like Dr. Dre, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to get one more platinum track, then fuck esports, you can have it back. That's what they were like.
Solid reference, all right. Yeah.
Not bad. You like that one, right? So, why can we just have just one fucking award? That's all I've got too, you know, by the way. I've got even less than you because I couldn't award myself the awards that I had to award you.
Yeah.
But in my mind going, yeah, second's all right, Duncan, you fucking piece of shit. You know, like, come on, for fuck's sake. Why can we not just fucking, like, you know, at the end of the day, these guys are going to get their time. You don't need to force anybody out of the industry just because you don't like their politics or their tweets or whatever.
Well, here's a funny thing about that, actually. One thing I would say to people who are in that position, a lot of them new people, obviously, by the way, and some of them aren't just complete arseholes. Some of them are just a bit misguided, you know. This is actually something that affects the world of casting a lot, which is I always tell people that it doesn't matter how good you get. What matters is there's always a lag from how good you are to when everyone knows that you're that good. And that lag is essentially your reputation. Your reputation has to build that you're the number one caster. Then you get all the top gigs. Now, that was funny enough. I'll tell you outright. I'm sure you wouldn't mind me saying this. Sadakist himself had this as a massive problem in esports. When he first came in, he was like one of those rookie of the year type guys, you know, in the space of a year, he'd done some great event. He was already doing the majors. He was already like, you know, building hype. The problem is, as a caster, yeah, he was probably already similar to the level of the Anderson Semmler of the world. His problem though is his rep hadn't caught up. And so to him, he would think, so why aren't I doing the final? Why aren't I doing this big match here? And it's because, yeah, you might be as good, but everyone doesn't know it yet. Once everyone knows it, you will get, it's lagged for you initially, but it also works the other way around. Guess what? That means actually when you pass your prime, you'll get a little bit of extra time because your rep won't have caught up yet that you're not the number one person anymore. So it's just one of those things where people have to kind of feel out the industry. And I know that's like the casting one's a pretty good example because it always goes that way. You know, you never get your full due until a little bit afterwards. And by the way, Anders and Semler didn't either. They also, when they were number one at the beginning, didn't get all the major finals and didn't get to do them as a duo. This is the
madness, isn't it? This is the madness of the myth.
It goes with everyone.
Propagated by people who weren't there at the time. Let me tell you a fucking story about Anders and fucking Semler. At the first DreamHack, which, by the way, the first DreamHack major, I should say, I wasn't involved. They even resurrected motherfuckers like BSL from the fucking dead. You know, I was the sideline reporter still back then. BSL, it was like, yeah, come out of very successful journalist. I won't rag on him too hard, but they would, they fucking just well, let's see if it works. Let's get you on. You know, they tell you what you like, and then you got to deal with cunts who aren't there telling you how dare you wear a basketball jersey on stream. Straight banter, of course. Shout out to D-Man. Having a go at PUBG now, bless him, love him. Oh, big.
Sorry, don't worry, Rich. That didn't make me on any low level bitter and in some way fuck with his career later on. And then, unfortunately, met up with a man named Semler, and together, I believe the story is that we ended his career, didn't we? So, all jokes, merely jokes, though.
So straight up, right? Like, those guys they had done every game. Let me tell you about fucking work ethic in Counter-Strike, right? And work ethic in esports in general. I first met Anders, I think it was 2012, at Copenhagen Games. He came up to me, said he wanted to meet me, shake my hand. He said he was starting to do casting. He was coming up, and he was doing every fucking shit game that he could get an IP for. Like I'd be awake at 5 a.m. like wrecked out of my mind. Like what's going on, and I'd find a stream with 50 people on it, and it would be Anders commentating on like some absolute dog shit Finnish team versus an even worse Finnish team, or like a Lithuanian team in the middle of the night. And when he partnered up with Semler, who had a pretty tough time, he was in the Good Studio, had come over from Bloodline Champions. The Good Studio was a fucking mess because it pretty much revolved around Too Good, and Too Good was struggling with his own fucking, work ethic issues because he'd already made it and he wanted to develop a game and blah, blah, blah. So Anders and Semler are kind of a perfect pair. They get together and then they both start doing those nightmarish 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. their time games that no one's watching. And they grinded them. They fucking grinded them non-stop. And people started to like them. And they started to get a following. And then when the fucking first major comes around and everyone's like, Anders and Semler are going to be involved. Isn't that going to be great? What a win for the community. What a win. DreamHack turned around and said, no, you ain't good enough. You ain't good enough to be on the main stage. So they put them on the secondary stage. Meanwhile, they took casters that weren't working regular, or people who weren't really casters at all. Again, I'm not ragging on him for this, whatever people might think. But, Lurpis was casting games on the main stage, if I remember rightly, while Anders and Semler were on this tiny little stage doing nothing. Now, did I ever hear them bitch and moan and say, bloody, that fucking Lurpis, that toss pot, fucking hell, should just drive them out of esports. No, they've made a solid contribution. There's a reason they are where they are, but eventually people are going to try new things, move on, filter out. You hang in there, you work hard, you get your time, and the rest is history. And then obviously, if you look at like where Anders and Semler were at the time when Henry and Sadakis came in, they got that hunger, they got that fire. People want to change in the finals, and it's not a foregone conclusion anymore. But Anders and Semler changed the fucking game forever. We didn't even do commentary the way we do it
here's
now.
The funny thing, Rich, you're absolutely right in that respect, because they obviously, yes, there was the duo of like Artosis and Tasteless, but when people bring that one up, that's a bit disingenuous. They were the only English casters in Korea, and there was 2 of them hired to work that event. So like, yeah, unsurprisingly, they were a duo. They worked a league, but to make it at events where you have a duo, yeah, it completely changed the game. And by the way, helped the people who then replaced them. Because when Henry and Sado came up, here's what you could have done in the old world where it was all the casters, like the Tosspots, the Red Eyes. You could be a gangster. Anders could have gone, well, I'm always going to be the most popular. Yep. So you know what? Semler, you're out, mate. And actually, I'm bringing in Sadakist. And you know what? Fuck you, Henry. I'm taking your partner. And you know what? I'll just stay on the top no matter what. And whoever wants to can cycle next to me. But instead, because he'd made the duo concept, now when he gets bumped, suddenly he doesn't do the finals because the new duo does the finals. So it's funny. It all does even out if you kind of work hard enough in a way, right?
Yeah, like what I genuinely think once we kind of, because there were some nasty pieces of work in esports that were legitimately abusing their power to stop people having opportunities. Yes. Once they either got or got fucked off or came crashing down to earth or just retired, whatever it was, there was a generation that, because there was nothing in esports, like you couldn't share because there was so little to go around. It had to be dog eat dog in a way, but obviously people like me and you suffered because of that. So we had a view it was an old boys club. Now there's plenty of work to go around. If you're good enough and you hang in there and you work hard, you'll get yours. And it's a sign of the times that I think guys like Anders, like you say, they're not gangsters, they're not villains. Meanwhile, of course, Artosis, Tasteless, over in Korea, running that shit like the fucking Cosa Nostra. Talk to anybody who out in Korea had to go and kiss their collective rings just to get a fucking day job, just to get some work. If you were not in that clique, if you were not in that group, you didn't get to work out there. They would leverage everything they had to keep you the fuck out of making it big in Korea or with OGN or whatever it was. I've seen genuine mafia shit while I've been in esports, like literally people threatening each other over money, threatening each other with violence. I've seen it all to stop people getting fucking work, which brings me to the first topic of the show.
Okay. Right? Segue.
No, because look, I said because we hadn't done a show for a while, we were going to do a special show. There's going to be a lot more abstract concepts here because we're not going to talk about the blast. We're not going to talk about the blast because I'm going to bring Anders on to talk about the blast, and then the three of us are going to hash it out. I hope tomorrow, if you're not doing anything, because, you know, we got to get that Patreon goals. We'll see. Anders says he's in. He's doing his accounts at the moment, apparently, so he can't come on right now, but we'll do it tomorrow. But look, so here's the first thing. You made a tweet. And Sam's going to bring this tweet up because he's a good producer. You did a tweet, and it segues in from what we're talking about, where it's the picture of everyone with their hands in the air. I'm always careful about raising my hand on this fucking podcast.
Just always do it from the side first. Go up from the side.
You'll notice I'm conditioned to do that now, so people don't fucking screen cap it and put it on Reddit. But anyway, so there was that picture with everyone with their hands in the air, and you said, just having our annual meeting to see if we can keep Megaman out the industry. Now, the reason you made this joke, straight fire, by the way, straight fire. The reason you made this joke, by the way, is because Megaman had been feeling a little bit sorry for himself, a bit self-pitying, talking about how he'd been told by a tournament organizer he couldn't get a job, he couldn't get a gig because another caster had said they didn't want to work with him. So I just want to get your perspective on all of this and why you made that tweet, Duncan.
Sure. Well, actually, this all we didn't set this up, but funnily enough, does lead into this exact topic, which is that I come from the days where there was an actual hegemony of like 4 people who, if they wanted to, could ensure you never became a caster, never won an award, never got to the top of a big company. And by the way, part of it as well, I don't blame them entirely. As you say, first of all, scarcity, they were literally competing against you, but then also secondly, there weren't as many ways to kind of like build your own personal brand, so in some ways you built your brand after you got those positions at the top and you got your chances. It was a little bit the other way around from what it is now, where you can kind of like rise up, as we've said, through hard work, doing the smaller circuit, and eventually you kind of prove yourself. So the reason I'd made that joke is, first of all, it's banter, obviously. Like it's a funny joke because I've taken a scenario that has nothing to do with that and I've spun it so you think of it in a different way, and it's somewhat amusing. But I'd also did it to make the point that, like, what a ludicrous premise that is. What a ridiculous conspiracy theory that in the modern day, we all sit around, we all get together, all of us, and say, right, who are we going to ban from working in esports and as a caster? Because obviously, like, that's not in any way the way it goes. Like, listen, perhaps that's correct, that there was a tournament organizer told him that one person didn't want to work with him. Now, listen, you'll note he didn't bother telling us who that is. So it's obviously not important enough that he doesn't want to hope he can still work with them or burn the bridge with that guy, which, you have to take your own lumps on that one if you decide to do that or don't. But it's ludicrous to pretend that his lack of success is due to that, because I can tell you, I don't know who that is. I don't know what organizer that would be. If I had to even guess who the person would be, I'd have to give you like a short list of maybe 5 names. I don't think I could probably guess it first time, it's not obvious. And I have to say, in esports in general, I've made this point many times, but I usually say it about journalism. If you didn't make it in esports journalism and you gave it a proper go, either you weren't good enough or you were such an arsehole that no one wanted to work with you.
Yeah. And here's the thing. So I'm going to say this. This is my perspective on the Megaman thing. I've heard people say he's an asshole.
I've heard that as well, but I don't know him. That's the thing. So
and that's what I mean. And I don't know Corey, and he's always been super nice to me, which doesn't mean shit. Doesn't mean shit, obviously. How about this, Richard? I will say this, okay? Here's one thing I would make as a point, because again, I don't know him, so I can't comment on him personally, but I will say this, okay? I have also heard from people that he's an arsehole. Now, that, by the way, that doesn't mean I get some sort of a vote and then I've cast against him. No, it's never been brought up as a topic to me. But I'll say this. Here's the difference. So outside of casting, people might think, because of my persona on Twitter, that I must be an arsehole to work with. They definitely do.
I guarantee there is not a rep out there in the scene that like people saying like, oh, I don't want to work with him because of that. How have I won him over in that sense, right? It's because actually, in terms of as an actual colleague, that's not the case at all. People enjoy working with me, or they think it's beneficial or whatever. It's not as simple as people might think from the outside.
Yeah, and not only that though, I'll say this because I know Corey will watch this, right? So I'll tell you exactly why that fucking tournament organizer has told you that. Because it's a great way to deflect conflict, isn't it? Like, if you go to someone, yo, cunt, why won't you hire me? It's that bloody car. It's Napoleonic politics. You create an enemy overseas.
Shout out to the tournament organizer, you little fucking rat. How about just telling me you go hire him for some reason?
Yeah.
Why are you fucking snitching?
Yeah, exactly. Straight snitching. So, they do that to diffuse the thing. Like, saying, it's not bloody us, mate. It's, I would do, but, bloody those fucking esports Illuminati. Like, you hire the best man for the job. I mean, that's something that's always been true in this modern era of esports, that the politics goes on with companies like Riot, Blizzard. Fuck it, like in Counter-Strike, we're Gucci. Valve are never going to come down and say like, don't hire him, don't hire that. They just want a good show. They want their game represented right, and they want the best people for the job. And it's great. It's a genuine meritocracy. I think Megaman's a good caster. I think he's solid. I think he should probably get more work than he has.
Yeah, seems all
but
right.
then it's like you said, you got to look within. Why is it? And I'll tell you what doesn't help. If you go on to fucking social media talking about how there's some sort of overshadowing conspiracy holding you back, then you don't even stick to the guns of that. And then 4 days fucking later, you've changed your name to Rifts Casts, the shittest name of all time. Please go back to Megaman. I don't know what Rifts Casts is. No one does, mate. You're never going to be called Rifts Casts. No one's going to say that. It rolls off the tongue. It's so bad. Like, it's such a bad name.
It is the Deve of casting names, right?
Yeah, like when Device, who just signed fucking CS stickers. By the way, Valve, can I change my name to Dever? No, you absolutely fucking can't, mate. So, look, like, just go back to Mega Man. It's a wicked name, and until fucking Nintendo sues you, keep it, right? Changing your name isn't going to change the fact that everyone's going to go on Reddit and lie and pretend they played count. Like, that was insane. I will say that thread where it was like, yeah, I bloody pugged with him 10 years. Oh, fuck off. Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? You know what I mean? Like, you pugged with him 10 years ago and you've waited for this fucking moment. He was always a rager in 1.3. Like, fuck off. You know what I mean? So, like, obviously, and he tried to make a joke about that, saying, well, apparently everyone on Reddit's played Counter-Strike with me at one time. And then people criticised him for that. And again, just fuck off, mate. Like, I'd be pissed off about that. Sure. It's like, when people make the 6 monthly thread about me, being a cunt. And it's always some guy, yeah, and do you remember when he killed that Redditor with his bare hands? Like, because his brother had committed suicide and he was crying, or, whatever it is this week. It's garbage. Fuck you. If you ever tell a lie about someone and you knowingly go out of your way to spread it, at every opportunity, at every waking moment, you are slime. You are absolute slime. So 90% of the people who were talking shit about him claiming they pugged with him as slime, it doesn't alter the fact there's a video of him being an absolute cunt in a game, which the community won't tolerate.
Yes.
He's banned people using ESEA privileges he probably should never have had, which makes you look like a double cunt. And then if you're a self-pitying double cunt, guess what happens? The community don't like you, but you don't supplicate yourself. You got to own it.
Plus, I kind of tried to touch on this with the soft sell version of it, not Tainted Minds. Anyway, I tried to give you the soft sell version when I said, like, if you're a caster, you have to build your rep up as well as building your talent up, with the idea that there is a political game involved in it. But that is just the political game of you are a human being and other human beings have to want to work with you, or usually the other way around, just not despise you enough that they're like, actually, please, can I not work with that person? Like, I've been on plenty of tournaments where, they hired someone. I was like, okay, he's working there. But I've never said anything about it because it's not, by the way, just even as a selfish reason, it's usually never going to be a big enough issue that I'd like make it it's him or me. Like, why would I do that? Like, risks my position, also makes me seem like more of a diva to the tournament organizer. You'd have to be a pretty big arsehole before I'd even step in and do that. So listen, there is a political game involved, but it's the only people who ever complain about politics are the people who fucking lose. Like, yeah, I'll admit myself, I used to do that back in the day. I used to think, why do these people at this site always like block me joining it? When I'm better than all of them. Yeah, obviously I've talked mad shit on all of them, but I'm better than them. Like, well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? If I'd played the political game and thought, just don't tell them you think they're a cunt, and then do your work, they might actually hire you and they might get to know you and you might have no problems. So I guess in the end, Corey, it's boy meets world because this is a political game and you've got to play and win. Straight fire, absolutely. Yeah, clip that.
Not bad, mate. Yeah, well, we'll have that clip. And I'll tell you this, right, as well. So I'm going to give him like some just points to get back on track. So first of all, never, if you're a public persona, there's fewer things that a fucking audience will loathe more than if you're fucking self-pitying. You can be the biggest cunt in the world. Once you start publicly projecting and feeling sorry for yourself, everyone taps the fuck out. You're donezo. Go back to being called fucking Megaman is number 2. Fuck Riftcast. You don't need to rebrand. You need to fucking double down and work harder. Rebranding doesn't fucking fix that. 3, try and make friends with some of the people who you suspect it might be. Yourself, you've probably been an arsehole to someone, so go fix that. Go mend fences. It's not hard. We all talk to each other. Yeah. There's definite room for improvement, but we don't know you well enough to have the intervention on your behalf. Like, you're not going to walk in and all of the casters are going to be like, well, bloody Megaman, we've got to talk about your drinking, and it's never going to happen like that, right? Like, we don't know you well enough. You've got to come to the people you think it might be with. And then 4th and fucking final is just do your own fucking thing, man. Like, he's had breaks, he's on, he's off, he's in, he's out, he's got this name, that name. Fuck it, just do your fucking thing and the rest will fucking follow and come naturally. Here's someone you can learn from. There's a caster. For some reason, he thinks his name's Risk, but it is spelt Rizik, right? No, we've told him this for years. He calls himself Risk. Risk is definitely spelled R-I-S-K, but that's fine. It's not R-I-Z-C, but he's Risk, right? So, anyway, back when I used to be editor of Cadred, my right-hand man, Mickey McGee, wrote an article called It's Ridiculous, which...
Reasonable.
We had a thing for shit headlines over at Cadred, yeah. I admit it now. Yeah. We used to come up... We were all on drugs. We were all on drugs. It was the only way to get through. So anyway, we did this article called It's Ridiculous. And Mike wrote it, Mickey McGee wrote it. And it basically, this is when Rizik was the guy doing all the commentary for like CSS.
I'm just going to call it Rizik from now on.
Yeah, just to make it fit. And Mike wrote this article slamming him, saying, please, can another fucking caster come and stop him from being the voice of this game? That was the premise of the opinion piece, because he's so shit. I think what had happened was, and again, I hope this doesn't upset him because he's a nice guy, right? Like, but I think he come into some money from a relative passing away, and he went and spent all this money on a super sick studio setup, and he was literally casting all the games. He brought in a producer called Phoenix, who'd also spelt it wrong. It was like Phoenix, but obviously Denmark and spelling, it just doesn't work, does it? And they spent all this money and they were putting out a pretty subpar product. The production value was great for the games and everything, but the overall casting was terrible. And he took so many lumps from the community. He's got a fucking, the website of the game he's casting saying, please stop, please stop this. And he took it on the fucking chin and he went away and he got better and he's getting gigs now. And everyone goes, oh, who's this guy? He's actually good. He's all right. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? Like, if you just self-reflect. But, you know, I've got to be nice to him because one time I got drunk and we were out in a bowling alley in Denmark and he came in and you know, he looks like a bit of a nerd, or he used to. And he was wearing these really cool jeans that were too cool for him. They had all slashes in them, you know?
Okay.
And I was wasted, and I went up and I went, yeah, and I like put my fingers in one of the rips.
You ripped them all out.
I was unreasonable back then.
That is unreasonable as fuck.
Yeah, no, but so I ripped off his entire jeans in the middle of a bowling alley.
Why not?
He looked like the Incredible Hulk, mate. It was really
that just
bad.
Sounds like the most horrific bullying. These are too cool for you. You go naked, cunt.
It was really bad.
I just called him a nerd. So I think he's a bit of a nerdlinger, and he was wearing these jeans. So obviously I ripped them off him.
And then there was that time he came to the prom and he'd got this really cool outfit. We dropped this bucket of pig's blood all over him and he went mental, you know.
So I regret that, and I've apologized to him privately. I did promise to give him.
Can't lie.
I did promise to give him a copy. I think StarCraft 2 had just been released, and I had like an advanced copy of it because Blizzard used to like me then, and I promised to give it to him, and I never did.
so you never even made up for it.
No, I never made up for it. I owe him a pair of jeans, and I'm now in a position financially where I can afford it. So Risk, if you watch this, I'm sorry about your jeans. I'll buy you a new pair of jeans. Right, so there you go. I just want to talk about the Megaman thing, get it out the way. I hope he sees this podcast. Right, now there was an event that we're going to talk about, Duncan. Let's talk about some actual Counter-Strike, and then I got some more drama and some more bullshit to come and some abstract concepts. Right, so it was IEM Oakland, of course, was the one that we were sort of watching from afar. And this was an interesting tournament from the perspective of the show, because me and you have got this wager about Liquid and Cloud9. I've definitely won. It's brilliant. We'll see, though. The major's around the corner, obviously. But this was like a super interesting event because I was looking at everyone that was lined out and who was going to win it. And obviously it was Faze, you know, it's SK, it's Astralis, you know, G2, maybe Outsiders, and then like your Cloud9s. But the way it panned out was just like super, super interesting. So hopefully you can remember it. I know you've got like a photographic memory, so you probably can. So I'm going to sort of talk about some of the points that I've made a list of here. So first up, Liquid. Now, you have been giving Liquid like just reach arounds non-stop. You love a bit of Liquid. That is the team that right now everyone's going to accuse you of fanboying before you hate them again and move on to something new. But they were massively disappointing. They went out in the same spot as the Mongols, just for context. So what is up with Liquid? Obviously, I know they've had all these internal turmoils. They've replaced Stanislaw since we last did a show, brought Steel in. What the fuck is going on, brother?
Well, yeah, first of all, I will say over the entire tournament, they were pretty underwhelming because they only won 2 games, and those were 2 overtime games as well, by the way. So it's not as though, like when you go 2-3 like they did, you can say, it was only 1 game from making the playoffs. I mean, in their case, they were actually in a tie with Gambit in the end who made the playoffs. But they barely did that in itself, So I wouldn't take any like moral victory from this one. I don't think you can. I do think that the part of the problem is that they've had to just bring Steel in, and this was his first LAN, and I don't think he'd actually had very much time working with the team. Whereas the lineup they had before, I can certainly see why you make the change and you take out Stanislaw, because he was like the most obvious like surplus to requirements type guy. He wasn't the in-game leader anymore. He was doing terribly as a lurker. Like for some reason he had like I think 1 event maybe where he wasn't in a terrible funk and getting mega minus numbers, etc. But generally he was doing really badly. So I actually think the Steel edition's a good move. I think I could see some future with it. I think the last lineup had gone as far as it was going to go. Like they did that thing where you get it was obviously the same team they'd always had, but they made the role swaps, You get the initial boost and you think, right, is this like a trajectory? Is it going to go further? And what we learned was, no, it's pretty cool, but it just stops there. Like that's as good as you can be. And yeah, obviously getting a lot of hard groups in terms didn't help them. Not this one, admittedly, but getting a lot of hard groups didn't help them. It meant they probably got denied some extra placings. But I think we can look at the old lineup and say conclusively they weren't going to win an event. They did very well for what they could. So, I mean, Team Liquid's in a tough spot at the moment because, like, obviously people know they can't use, I believe they can't use Steel at the Major. They're going to have to use Zeus or something bizarre.
Yep.
And yeah, this was just a bit underwhelming because I actually think if you look at this group, especially with the way it played out, getting to playoffs was very doable, especially with like Sov G2 kind of shit in the bed as well. So I think this was an underwhelming result. I, like you say, at the moment, it's hands down that Cloud9 is better than Team Liquid.
Yeah, and here's the madness, dude, right? So I see a lot of people in the chat saying, you know, Stanislaus, like, been a terrible player. He's been a bot. You know, sure, he did have that, like, nightmarish performance he had.
I think it was ESL New York, the one that made the final.
Yeah, it was ESL New York,
mega negative.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was statistically, if you remember, we looked at it on the podcast. It was the statistically worst performance by any pro player. It was worse than Fifth Lauren at that ESL 1 Cologne that NIP won. So in a winning, you know, in any major tournament since, you know, the $250,000 prize pools come in. So he had a bad time, but I didn't think he was that bad going into it. What's interesting is I think we can, you know, if we look at the statements and everything that were made after Stanislaw left the team, once again, he had fallen into this, you know, kind of cursed by his own hubris, you know, like he had sort of challenged the coach a little bit, I think. You know, now keep in mind, he wasn't the in-game leader anymore, so he'd already had his power stripped away within the team from that perspective, but he still wanted to be a voice in tactics and sort of take over with second-round calls and that kind of thing. But then he clashed with coaching philosophy with Zeus. Well, there's only one winner in that. You're not even the in-game leader anymore.
Yeah.
You're going toe-to-toe with one of the most successful coaches we've got in World Counter-Strike. Who the fuck do you think's going to win that? And I kind of feel a bit sorry for Stanislaw here because I think he's learned a very harsh lesson in a very harsh way. He bailed on Optic because he was like, I'm going to Liquid. I want to win tournaments. I want to play with stars. He was the in-game leader there. It didn't work out. He got stripped of that, but he was still so confident that he could try and impose his will on the team and stamp his authority on the team. He thought, nothing's going to happen to me. Guess fucking what, motherfucker? Things can happen to you. No one's immune. And in the battle between Zeus and Stan, Zeus came out on top. And you know, again, there's a little bit of hypothetical and reading between the lines in that, but sure. I think that's a fair assessment of what went down.
Yeah, and that's actually part of the problem. Obviously, like, the biggest mistake that he made was thinking that he could let Nitro become the in-game leader and give up his power in that sense. Because before that, you actually have a very equal relationship there where you can have a disagreement with the coach on the philosophy, but you've both got to compromise with each other. Like, he's got to work with you. You're the in-game leader. At the time, there's no other candidate for the role. You can have a little bit of leeway there. His problem was he did the Zeus. And he was like, okay, I'll let someone else be the in-game leader. But then in my mind, I still think to myself, like, I have a lot of the say that an in-game leader has. Well, guess what? If you aren't the in-game leader and you're not playing very well, and they think to themselves, well, you know what, dude, we've got in-game leading covered now. We don't need you. You will just be removed. It doesn't matter who you are. The reason I give the Zeus example is, you know, he's obviously like the founding member. Yeah. Well, who knows what the fuck he does, mate? It's unreal, isn't it? He really must have just pulled someone from a burning car or something, or given him his liver or some shit. Who the fuck knows? It's just maybe that's what he's there for. Maybe he's got the same blood type as every Cloud9 member or something. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, he's the universal donor, mate.
It's not a bad theory, actually.
They're not bad. Yeah, mate. So, yeah, you know, it's crazy to me. And I don't know where Stan's going to go now. I don't know where you go from here. Like, it's a cruel business in the sense that, you know, we know he can be an in-game leader, but here's a team he could go back to, right? If all of these rumors about HS not being happy and Optic are good, imagine if he could go back to Optic, take the burden of Freiburg, and be the in-game leader of that team. Well, you definitely can't because you burnt that Optic bridge, and I don't think the fan base would take you back, and Hector definitely cares about the fucking fan base. You're called Snakeslaw, for fuck's sake. So there you go. There's one obvious job. You know, because of the way you left, you can't go back. Where the fuck does he go? And he's a player who could do a job. In-game leaders, good in-game leaders, and I still think Stan is a good in-game leader, are worth their weight in gold, especially in NA. But he has put himself way down the pecking order, and he needs to get into a winning team, and soon, or his stock is going to decrease very rapidly.
Yeah, his problem is he's picked also the worst time for this to happen because, as you mentioned, like I even think if you ignored all personal conflicts, he's the obvious person to bring into Optic. I mean, admittedly, they're now an EU team apparently. They're going to largely live in Europe, so that might be a problem, But in terms of like having a lot of talent to work with, having people who, by the way, probably, because a lot of them are in like a bad place in their career, probably would be open to having an in-game leader come in and actually impose the system and tell them what role to play. I think, I agree. It's just that unfortunately, it's a hard sell to the org and to the fans. Yeah. Then your other problem is the other team, which has been crying for an in-game leader for so long, is Cloud9, and they're doing so well in contrast to all the other NA teams. Why are they going to mess it up now? Probably aren't. I would still tell them to do it, but I don't. Put it this way, I don't blame them if they don't. They're doing really well right now. It's working really great. So at that point in time, there's not a lot of teams left. I mean, I have to say, there's this recent news that DK published that like CLG will apparently cut FNS. Maybe that's a move.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
That's a fucking downgrade if you're Stanislaw. You were on Optic and you were on Team Liquid, mate. You were getting fed superstar talents to then in-game lead. As I hope Stanislaw should have learned by now, it's a bit different when you have to get the young guy who's never proved himself and make that guy into a star. That's a fucking different skill set that some people just don't have, Some people are just star player coach type individuals or leaders, So that's a tough one. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of NA players also won't do the opposite thing where you go to the other continent and you go there and live there because, it's tough. But if you want to make it in your career, you might have to do it. Like if I was Stanislaw, what I would do is I'd be reaching out to like fucking Mouse Sports and tell them, you want an in-game leader? You got really great players, but you haven't got an in-game leader. Hire me. And then even be cynical. Like I always make this point to players, right? Most teams don't keep the same lineup for more than about 6 to 9 months. That's usually when you make a player change, So just think of it as, I'll do it for 6 months and see how it goes. If it goes great, you've got a great reason to keep doing it, right? If it isn't going great, you can pivot and you can come back to NA. You can do something else, But the idea that so many EU players won't go to NA, so many NA won't go to EU, it's up to you if you want to limit yourself. But when you are some of these players who are in a tougher spot, I think you've got to take a risk sometimes.
Yeah, and one thing I would say is it wouldn't be all doom and gloom if Stan did go to CLG. He would have like Ethan, Kuster, like some younger players that could probably mold. Yes, you've got Cutler, just the dead weight, the fucking albatross around your neck. That's a pain in the ass. Ricky's still pretty good, I think.
It's just if you were in a position where you were an Optic and Team Liquid, that is a punch in the gut, isn't it? To go to Team.
Of course it is, like waking up every fucking day, and it is a downgrade. There's no getting away from it. But, I think he could do so. I think, he could make lemonade from that group of lemons is what I'm saying, to a certain degree. I mean, like right now, they're still pretty directionless. Like CLG haven't been good to watch or play in high-level Counter-Strike for some time. And, I feel that maybe Stan can at least put a system in place. I would still say they need 1 or 2 other roster changes to be viable, but I'm a believer in Ethan. I'm a believer in Kuster still. Kuster's only 21. We talk about him like his fucking prime years are behind him. And I look at you, mate. I'm still riding that Kuster train till the fucking end, mate. I'm DMXing that shit. I'm riding it till I die, brother. Okay. You know what I mean?
I sold on that one. I sold that stock.
Yeah. I thought you might have done. So anyway, so there's that. So then the other thing, and you alluded to it a little bit earlier, was like G2 just so up and down at the fucking moment. This was the tournament where they disappoint. And, I know you watch a lot of G2. You do enjoy watching them. I just want to bring a general talking point here. No one wants to say this. I'm going to say it because tonight's the show where everything gets said. Shox hasn't played well for fucking time, mate.
Yeah,
he is living on past fucking.
Well, here's the irony, Rich, is that actually Epicenter was like one tournament bizarrely where he had like a little spike and they made like I think 3rd place or something, and that was it. Because before that, here's the mad thing. I'll give you a little bit of inside info as well. I believe I heard from someone in the team that it was something like he himself even thinks to himself that his form wasn't that good. This is a month ago, by the way, because I always said. Like, this is one thing that pissed me off, right? When they made this lineup, the main reason people like me who've watched the French scene were hyped is because finally Shox and Kenny S are going to play with each other. And if you remember the timing of it, Shox was just coming off a monster year in that G2 team that wasn't that great. And he essentially made it great. So you're thinking to yourself, fucking, this is the dream, right? Even if nothing else happens, at least I get to watch Kenny S and Shox score ham every game. Then you start watching G2 and you're going, Where the fuck Shocks? Like, what is this? Like, he was even worse than when he was a role player in the Envious lineup, you know. So Kenny S has been going ham. He's been doing a great job. Shocks is not just the in-game leader, but apparently he's now embraced the aspect of that where he's just the strat caller. And that's what I'm telling you. I'd heard that apparently he thought his individual form wasn't that good, so he was kind of taking himself out of positions in which he could have been a fragger, thinking, right, well, I've got these other guys, they can all do it. So yeah, that's depressing, right? Because if you then don't win, it's like, what the fuck's the point in this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, I've talked about this with Shocks. Known him many years, love the guy. He does fancy himself as a great thinker, and I worry about this because Shocks' play style has always been instinctive. It's not like polished, methodical. It's I go on a fucking server and I play the way I'm feeling, and because I'm so attuned to the game, 70 to 80% of all decisions I make, even random flicks, crosshair placement, it'll all work. It'll all land.
Well, I'll give you a reference point, okay, right? I could actually believe that if you sat down like Zinedine Zidane, he probably could lay out, right, here was the tactical system and the coach wanted me to bring the ball up to here and then feed it into the striker. He probably could break it all down, right? But if you talk to Gaza, Paul Gascoigne, he just did something in the moment. It was brilliant, and you hope it works out in your favour. And he probably can't, after the fact, break it all down as to why. Now, Shocks, he's not as ridiculous as that. I've given a really extreme example there. But put it this way, he's not a great thinker. And he is, by the way, one of the worst ever offenders for that thing I talked about in a past episode where, you know, all the French players are like, oh, we just had the no confidence in the match. It's like, well, no, but what happened in the tactics? We did not really feel a confidence in the pistols. It's like, no, but why did he do a force buy though? If it works out, then the risk is like, a fucking hell, when are we ever going to get answers? You know, it's all just, this is nothing to do with actual tactics. So if you're the in-game leader and you think that way, I do kind of give up a little bit, you know?
Yeah, and then this is true. It's like, I say this all the time, like you know, this isn't somebody that is a great tactical thinker just purely by the way he expresses himself. He talks about feelings, emotions, moments.
Like you notice, the great in-game leaders give wicked interviews. You fucking get Carragher. Even this is even an area. All on the mic, and they'll all break down. Like, listen, whether you agree with what they did in the match, they'll give you a great reason as to why they did it.
Exactly. Same with Fallen. You know, you listen to these people, even in a decision that looks inexplicable, they can rationalize it and explain how contextually within that moment it makes sense. There's no feelings. It's this is what we thought was happening, so this is what we did. And this is why I've always said it. Like, for me, Shocks is just better where, you know, I say it all the time, you know, you don't cage the butterfly. You got to let him be out there. And it's like, when he feels insecure about the way he plays the game, his method of control is to do more in the team. So he wants to in-game lead. He wants to AWP. And it's like, dude, that's got to stop. Now, with Smiths being involved, I thought it would stop. Because, you know, that's the fucking great confidence in your ear. No, you do not need this. You are, there's confused foreign man face again. You do not need this. You are the great Shocks.
He's supposed to be that hype man that Muhammad Ali had, right? Just going around his ear.
Drew Bundini Brown. Yeah.
He's supposed to be going ham in his ear and me.
Yeah,
hey, exactly. This guy said I was shit. Fuck him up.
Yeah, and that is literally what I expected to happen. That, like, Smiths was going to basically be the guy that stopped Shocks lapsing back into these bad habits of his of trying to assert more control and influence in a team, when what he needs to do, if anything, is to have less responsibility. Like, he should just be going wild on a server. You know, we every top team has a player like that. Do you think Fallen has to micromanage fucking Cold Zero? Do you think he even says to guy? Do you think if Cold Zero in the middle of a match goes, I've got a good read, I'm gonna go B? Do you think anybody says, no, you must respect the system? It's fucking Cold Zero. It's the best player in the world. And there was a period of time where Shocks was up there with him and should be that instinctive player and take control of matches that way by just having a dominant performance. Meanwhile, you look over what RPK's been doing in 2017. RPK is playing on the fucking level that Shocks should be doing in this team. And I'm telling you, the French, they get antsy whenever things aren't working, and they do make roster swaps, and they recycle the same few players cyclically every 6 to 9 months. So, you know, I think we're at a stage now where I think, you know, if G2 don't book up their ideas, Shocks is going to be on the chopping block, and I hope it don't happen, because Shocks at Kenny S was a fucking dream of mine. Same as every.
And we haven't had it yet. That's the sick part, right? We've been sold a false bill of goods on that one, you know?
Exactly, do them under the Trades Description Act. That's G2. Again, disappointing performance. I don't know where they go from here. They got to do something. I saw an interview with MBK where they were talking about, how they need like more structure and They do, but where's it going to come from? They got to step it up. They got to step it up.
Unfortunately, I can tell you, that's someone I actually have known, fairly well over the CS:GO years. That's basically one of his jobs in his teams, right? Because their teams are so inexplicable. All the teams he's been in with Happy in fucking existence, they always have some element that they do where you think this is almost obvious why you're losing. Why do you always do that? You've got everything else, just don't do that and you'll be number one. He's the guy where he's like the fucking PR guy. He'll come out and give you a good reason. Oh, but you don't understand. Kenny's just a bit, he gets a bit nervous in games. You have to let him do it. Whatever it is, he'll always reverse engineer a great reason why himself, which funnily enough, by the way, is why for years and years, everyone always tells him, why don't you just be the fucking game leader? You have played every role and seem like the guy with his head screwed on. But for whatever reason, as we all know, he tries it for a week and then quits. So unfortunately, I've sort of learned to tune out MBK in that sense. I don't really buy when he says that. I think sometimes he's doing that thing where he's saying that to his team. He's saying in an interview, we need more structure because that's what he wants the rest of them to listen to. But I don't know if the rest of them believe it, because I have to say, Shox and Kenny S especially, those are two players who, it's no wonder they've had their kind of fallings out with the other in-game leaders in the scene, because they are the most resistant to change, it seems, of almost any players I've ever met as pro players. They really do. They're the guys who would repeat the same mistake 10 times over and not realize it was a mistake. They're just going to, it just didn't work out this time. Work out next time, don't worry.
So I want to talk about Gambit too. I don't know if this actually applies as a we. I know I kind of wrote them off as soon as Zeus left. And I usually don't get suckered into easy storylines. But here's what I know now. Zeus actually brought an extra 10% to Gambit and not much more than that. He pushed them over the top. Sure. Gambit were already a very good and established team. And the stories that we should be talking about from Gambit, it's not really Zeus at all. It's the fact that Adrian is one of the players of 2017, despite being a mad veteran. It's the fact that Mo actually has found some form of consistency in 2017, or certainly the latter half of it. Hobbit, they need to fucking do it. Isn't he? Yeah, they need. So I hope he has a long and fruitful life. But when he does finally pass away at the ripe old age, they just want to maybe take his brain away and just have a look, just because it's mental. It's mental. It's mental how good he is, and for somebody with no fucking tenure and no fucking experience, just to come in and be as good as he is, and especially at this tournament, unfucking real player. And then it's sure, if you sprinkle Zeus onto that, and Zeus obviously had his own demons to conquer and his own point to prove, which probably made him be less of an asshole in this team than what he was in Na'Vi.
Sure.
That's a winning recipe. And I'm a little bit ashamed, honestly, of myself that I fell into that trap of it was all about Zeus that made you win. I feel like I disrespected four very good players.
Well, I'll give you the analogy, okay? Here's the reference for you. So do you remember the NFL quarterback Kurt Warner, who obviously made his name with the Rams, right? That was the team that he won the title with. And then later on in his career, he bombed one year with the Giants and everyone was he's done. And then what happened was he went to the Arizona Cardinals and he revamped his whole career because he got Larry Fitzgerald as his wide receiver, who at the time was if not the best, became one of the best very quickly, right? Yes, I have no doubt Kurt Warner, with his experience and his knowledge of the game, and a bit past his prime, was able to help Larry Fitzgerald blossom and become really good, right? But you had Larry Fitzgerald. Now we've realised that guy's a lot bigger in the equation than the Kurt Warner part, once you've seen them play out their careers, right? I think it was like that with Zeus. I definitely think Zeus was listen, maybe he was exactly the right man to do it and he had the right experience. And as a result of his experience, perhaps they listened to him more and these young players were able to be molded a little bit. But as I kind of made the point in that little snipe video I did, people kind of ignored that all these pieces were brought together by Gambit that they didn't have in the old team, which is what made him better. As we're saying, Adren became much, much better. And then Hobbit, the idea you could find someone like that who then become a star is ridiculous. And they did. And then, again, even more now didn't have as much pressure on him because he didn't have to be a star player. There's all these factors which then you add Zeus to and you go over the top. But even if you hadn't, if you'd have had some other in-game, they'd have still been a much better team than they used to be, which is obviously the part they missed. But yeah, as we're kind of rounding out here is they don't have Zeus anymore, but still a dangerous team and kind of surprisingly so.
And they my favorite series, I think, of the tournament. I mean, apart from the final, which is always great when you get a best of 5 and it goes to 3-2 and it's good and it's close and it's back and forth. Everyone remembers that. It makes best of 5 look good. The 3-0s, not so much. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But it was the Cloud9 Gambit game where Cloud9 won 2-1, you know? Like the second maps weren't super close if you look at it from a scoreline perspective. But they had super close first halves. They were like 8-7, 8-7. I think the first map, which Gambit won in overtime, was a 9. Yeah, so that was like 9-6 halftime. It goes to 19-16. It was a really good series. Had a great ebb and flow to it. And Hobbit just fucking teed off in this. Like, I mean, it was unreal. It was so good to watch. Sort of like Hobbit eclipse, like, you know, Stewie 2K, Automatic, who it's not like they played bad, you know, they did really well. Tarek had a fucking miracle performance, as did Skadoodle in this series. It was like, it was everything good about these teams sort of culminating in a really good back and forth series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I realized in that moment while I was watching it, I was like, I think we can't count Gambit out, actually, of the, you know, upcoming major with or without Zeus. We can't count them out in general. They're still a top 10 team for me. I think they get into the bottom end, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where it is now. I'm trying to see if I can find it. I can't remember who it was who made this, so let me just double check. But I know one of these guys who's like one of the up-and-coming video guy. Okay, it was actually the guy who works with me, Max Millet, this Australian guy. He actually did a video the other day, which is like a 20-minute video where he takes like clips from the game and he breaks them down, etc. And what he actually was looking at was all these mid-round calls that he'd made in Gambit. Because the part I found bizarre as an outsider, like I watched the games, but first of all, when you watch a Gambit game, oftentimes you're watching the other team, like you're watching Faze or you're watching Virtus Pro or you're watching Cloud9, you know, you mainly look at the team you expect to win the match. And then when Gambit makes it close and makes it 3 maps, which they've done all these times, you're thinking like, fucking hell, how are they doing this? And yeah, you can look at the fact, yes, obviously Adren is a fantastically well-rounded player. Hobbit's like the find of the century for what a great consistent fragger he is. But here in this video, he did a really good job outlining how, like, because obviously the in-game leader part's the part that you can't really figure out. Because first of all, like they had Adren and that made his game suffer. And then they swapped to Dosia apparently recently, which again, as fans of the show will realize, I think we're not on the train that Dosia is some fucking mastermind going into Cerebro looking for all the tactics and scouting motherfuckers. I think he just goes, right, yeah. And they go, nah, the game's on now, mate. And he goes, all right, okay. And he starts playing, you know, he's probably throws fucking nades all the time for no reason. They're like, what you doing? 200 IQ nade. Like, nah, not the time, Dosia. Wait for me. Wait for my signal, you know, like obviously I don't buy that he's doing that. But if you look at the game, one of the things I think they have been able to use to make themselves so successful is that they've made a lot of like individual plays in the middle of the round. So they're doing sort of a bit, I'd say kind of like a bit like Virtus Pro. You set up the basic tactic, but then what you do is 90% of the time, a tactic breaks down because the opponent does something you didn't expect or a guy dies, you know. The question is, what do you do at that point? Now, if you're some amazing team like the old Fnatic teams or the SK Gaming team right now, your superstar players already know what to do, you know. They just make individual plays because they're the best players in the world. But if you're an underdog team, if you have guys who can make a read, like presumably it's people like Adren who are doing this, and then they can do something amazing out of nothing, you will consistently have chances to win rounds against teams that are better than you. So I thought this was actually quite a good video for that topic because it's not really something you can just outline in words alone. You know, you need kind of examples to show someone what they changed up to make it work, you know, because I feel like there is something in Gambit where they're doing a really good job of making the most of like having the veteran voices and then having the up and coming fraggers. And you can't over talk them because they're not winning these fucking tournaments. You know, they're oftentimes not going deep, but they're a lot better than they feel like they should be.
Yeah, and you know, I definitely feel that if they, it's just like one or two little tweaks. I'm very intrigued to see what they're going to do, honestly, at the next major. Like, see if they can, defend it or whatever. I'm not saying they will, but I think they're going to definitely have a big say in who wins it for sure. I don't think they can be counted out. They've sort of re-won me back over, you know. Right, so the last sort of thing I want to talk about, obviously, we can wax lyrical about SK Gaming all day long, and plenty of time to talk about them when we do the Blast special tomorrow. So we'll move on and let's get to the final, which was between NIP and Faze. Now, NIP had sort of had this ridiculous run. Their game, sure, obviously they beat the Mongols, you'd expect that, but they started out strong. They smashed Cloud9 in their first game, beat the Mongols, beat Envious, and then when they got to the best of threes, where I was like, hang on a fucking minute, is when they beat SK.
Yes.
Because I didn't see a world where NIP could beat SK Gaming in a series. Sure, we know Inferno's going to be on there, and you're always going to have a chance against SK Gaming. In fact, I would say, whichever team you are, if you're a top tier team, a top 10 team, you should be favourite to beat SK and Inferno. It's still a major weakness. They've not ironed out the kinks on that map at all. And Inferno did get into this series because obviously SK are going to remove Nuke, but it was actually the leftover map. SK could have got rid of it if they wanted. They decided to take Train away, which in the veto, which was a bad call. But I didn't see a world where NIP could beat SK, where the first two maps were Overpass and Cache.
Yes.
I was like, well, SK got this. Like, this is it all day long. It's not even going to make it to Inferno. And fucking, it didn't even, NIP beating SK on Overpass blew my fucking mind. It blew my mind.
Absolutely, because here's the thing. Like, this whole series ended up being like a microcosm of NIP's tournament, because they basically went and did the exact same shit against fucking FaZe in the final, which is in all these games, on the maps where you think, right, this is the one where, like, you're probably not going to win, like this Overpass game against SK. SK is very, very good on Overpass. That's a map that, like, especially against, I mean, NIP was playing it, but you'd definitely favor the guys from SK. But you go and look at this game, and a trend that continued through the whole tournament for NIP was, as soon as they got down on any T half, like as soon as they lost like a big buy round in like the fourth or fifth round of the game, on their T half, they would always instantly take a timeout every single time. And then in the timeout, presumably, Threat would make some sort of a read, some sort of an adjustment. They'd come back into the game. And if they didn't win the round after the timeout, they'd win like the second round after the timeout. And it always kind of like course corrected them. And they did a really good job throughout this series in the final of like using the timeouts at the right moment, not blowing it too early, but then saving one in case you need one if the score's going to get close late. So that was a massive factor. And yeah, winning Overpass alone was a shocker, because you look at the rest of the tournament, they got absolutely rocked by FaZe on Overpass. When they played Inferno against FaZe, they got their shit pushed in. That's another factor about this series that I think NIP did a great job as an underdog, actually, which is that when they did this veto, right, when they got to the end, SK removed Train, because SK, I think, was gambling, right? Well, NIP's just going to pick Overpass because we both play Overpass. In fact, we played it in the group stage here. Whereas actually, for people who don't know, NIP aren't a good Inferno team either. NIP generally would want to avoid that, hence why they got their heads kicked in by FaZe. But NIP literally went with the Inferno pick using the logic that, like, yes, as you've just said, SK's been weak on it. So if we can make some sort of a read, we can make some sort of like key plays on Terrasat, then we got a chance. And that ended up being a big factor of what they were able to do. Yeah,
and so they get through to the final against FaZe, and you did this tweet, and again, obviously, the fans love that one because, but I think it was the prescribed wisdom. I think Yanko said the same thing. I think Sponge said the same thing.
So I don't know a single expert who picked NIP to win.
No, not at all. I certainly didn't. And when I saw your tweet, like if NIP beat FaZe in a best of 5, it would be one of the greatest upsets in CS history. Obviously, there's a little bit of hyperbole and showmanship in there, but it's not entirely untrue. If you think about finals and sort of Herculean labors with which you would want to do, taking FaZe on in a best of 5, somehow getting 3 maps against them, I think that is pretty much as tough as you could get. Now, what I will say is, I was amazed that NIP had sort of powered it to the final. I became a believer after the SK Gaming thing. Threat obviously seemed to have a big influence this time around. I think a lot of people were talking about that on social media and amongst our peers and colleagues. Rez had a miracle tournament run. And this is what I've talked about it on the podcast before with you. At this tournament, he finally stopped all that bullshit, like trying to support other people. Like, real talk. Exist is never getting back to what it used to be. It's never happening. And he was dead weight. He was drag factor all this tournament. Rez had to play like 1.5 players this tournament to make up for what Exist was doing until the final. Then Exist actually, his step up is what gave NIP just a push over the top against FaZe. Rez, I don't know if he'll ever do that again, but I believe that NIP can win, tournaments, even with this lineup as we move through into 2018. I think all the parts are there. I think if they do switch Exist out for another Swede, a better player, I think it would make NIP stronger, honestly. I hate to say it, but it's how I feel. For me, NIP is pretty much about Forest and Get Right, and then you include Exist and Freiburg, yes. That's how it is, right? But
don't you think that's actually a bit weird? Whenever we did this discussion in the past, like it always was weird to me that they counted all those players as like, you can't remove this guy. Like I get it, right? If you're a legendary sports franchise, usually you do give the superstar player kind of his ticket to ride. Like, we'll wait until you retire and then we'll bring in the young gun who's going to replace you. But you don't do that to like the 4th best player on the team. When he gets us past his days, you go, you're out. I'm sorry. There's a reason why we won't be putting your jersey in the rafters probably, while that guy will, that he gets leeway. It's a bit bizarre that NIP, those are the players I never understood, that they were so all in on Exist in Freiburg for so many years.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, they definitely had chemistry and synergy and a good relationship within the team. Totally respect all that, and I respect everything Exist has done. I respect everything Richard's done while he's been in that team. But he has been playing like ass for a while now, and he's never blown me away as an in-game leader. And he's never going to.
Yes.
He's not that kind of guy. So again, it's like the same shit we just talked about. Why is this guy? Like with Stanislaw, what is this guy doing in the team? If when Threat can get involved and get behind a team, what do we need Exist for? And obviously we've just seen at the Blast Dennis fucking going off, and Dennis is out there in free agency. By the way, Dennis, what a fucking smart savage motherfucker he is. He knew, I'm in the shop window here, motherfuckers, watch this. And he was probably getting told by Glaive, can you just stand over here with a flashbang out? Fuck you, I'm going to go kill everyone. I've got to get a contract, Glaive, you skinny motherfucker.
He's on some straight Kenny Powers shit.
Yeah, like legit, like, I've got a fucking arm like a cannon, a dick like an anaconda, and a mind like a fucking rocket scientist. He was just out there fucking straight dropping bodies because he's got to get paid. And I'm telling you right now, NIP fans love that fucking, core 4. They love that 4, They even pretend they didn't want Fifth Lauren to get kicked out now, NIP fans. They love to reminisce, right? They love to reminisce. They bloody love those guys. I haven't met an NIP fan yet who, off the back of that Blast performance, do you want to keep Exist over Dennis then? Perhaps he could help Threat with the coaching. Fuck off, motherfucker. You want him replaced. That's just real talk. So, for me now, if you were to add Dennis into that fucking team and somehow it all clicked, and let's assume the relationships are good and it all gets on, holy fucking shit. Draken's coming good, Rez is coming good, Get Right and Forest are the gods of Counter-Strike on planet Earth. Like, that could work. That would legitimately be challenging top teams. I honestly think if Dennis can maintain that level of performance even in that team, they're up there. They're contending all throughout 2018.
Plus, to me, it's like even look at it from Exist's perspective, right? This is your chance to show us we're all wrong. If you go and you take Epsilon, whoever, some lineup, I don't know who the fuck it would be at this point in time, Godsend, whoever it might be, or maybe you join Mouse Sports or Optic or wherever it is, and you turn out to be some wicked in-game leader who reinvents his career, a la Zeus, this example, you would then get all the plaudits again, and you would show us you're all wrong, and you wouldn't be in the scenario where you get criticised, by the way, even when they win a fucking tournament, which, fair play, he didn't do a whole lot. He had pretty shit numbers in a lot of it, but I kind of agree. That's the part I think's a bit whack as well, is to me, not only has the Swedish scene done itself a real disservice by keeping all its names at the top, but you don't sort of, like, this is actually a thing, if you looked, one of the differences between the Danish and the Swedish scenes is the Danish scene was very cutthroat with its cuts. And so when they kicked people out, They didn't just disappear. They went to the teams below. And if you ever go and look now at all the talent in the Danish scene, they have all played with like Hunden, MSL, Glaive. It's like they've done the gamut. And so by the time they get to play for Glaive in Astralis, they've been trained by the best fucking in-game leaders your country had. If you live in Sweden, you get onto the team and that's your first real in-game leader, or that's the first time you've ever played in a proper team. You know, there's a difference in culture in those areas. And I think actually, I don't think it's a coincidence that one region's fucking booming, doing amazingly. And the other one, yeah, they've had this amazing one-off with Nip. But aside from that, it's been pretty dire for the last 6 months.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, back to the final. Again, great performance by, all of the guys in NIP. Like I say, Exist stepped it up. He was still statistically the worst player on NIP, even with a step up. He was just performing worse than that before. But here's the key thing. So the takeaways for FaZe losing this. FaZe should have had this all fucking day. I do not understand how they weren't able to beat NIP. Obviously, mad credit to NIP. Totally deserved it. Played better in the final. But 2 things. So first of all, do we need to revise just how good FaZe's map pool is in light of the fact they couldn't beat NIP in a best of 5? And second of all, Karrigan has got to shoulder a lot of the responsibility, not for the veto, not for the tactics, but his own individual level of performance actually for once sort of came back to haunt FaZe here, because Exist had stepped up that little bit extra and Karrigan didn't. If anything, he fell off that little bit extra. To put it into context, right? Across the 5 maps that were played, Karrigan got 47 kills. The next person on his team was Guardian with 82. And there wasn't anybody who had less than 60 apart from Karrigan. Think about it. That's across 5 maps. 60 kills across 5 maps. I mean, that's just turning up and hitting a few headshots. Karrigan didn't even get 10 kills per map average. So this is bad. There's no justification for an individual level of performance that bad. And it was just very strange because everything's been going so good for FaZe. We've been talking about how they can be the dominant team. They can be in an era. The only thing that's challenging them has been SK. But this is the first time I thought, actually, wow, Karrigan, man, you actually got to step it the fuck up,
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. In terms of the map pool aspect, I do think people have criticized their map pool, but I do think there's that, I don't think that this is like a game changer, because to me, the problem with their map pool is that there are teams, funnily enough, it's been Gambit, obviously this NIP team now, to a lesser degree Virtus.pro, because I don't know if Virtus.pro can replicate it, who have had good matchups against FaZe. They're some of the few teams that can go into a series and go, hey, we can get the maps we want and potentially beat you on them, The difference is, it's been really good for FaZe that of those teams I just listed there, most of those teams aren't going to meet you in the semi-finals. Everyone else will take care of them. So the reason why I think FaZe has been so dominant before now is because they actually have the dream map pool against all the other teams. If you look at the teams who are number 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., basically everyone except SK, and SK actually will play FaZe's maps as well. They all play the maps that you want to play. Inferno, Mirage, bit of Overpass. They're basically playing into your wheelhouse. So as a result, FaZe is better on those maps and is unreal firepower. So I think that's why they have an edge still, in my opinion, against most of the top 10. There's the odd team that can match them in this sense, but luckily for them so far, it hasn't been the teams that are probably you're going to have to beat in the final. With that said, I do think another factor is that I still think FaZe can win on all these maps they lost here. They can for sure. They could win on Train and they could get wins on Cash, etc. Here's the bizarre thing, though. I think the area in which I think FaZe have almost broken Counter-Strike is that I don't think they sat down and figured this out. But if you look at it in hindsight, right, if you could just win 10 rounds on CT side every game, you have a mega chance of winning any map. Doesn't matter what the map is, because now your T side doesn't have to be amazing at all, right? Well, in a way, if you wanted to have a godlike CT side in CSGO, just put an amazing fragger at nearly every position on the CT side. Now, yeah, it's not as simple as that. You got to finagle it. You got to figure out who's going to play what spot and who's going to compromise and where's Karrigan going to stand and is his site going to be a liability? There's still a lot to go there. But I think that's one of the things they've cracked is that they've got this mad firepower on CT side, and in general, they're using it pretty well. That's why, for example, going into that 5th map, even though you look at them and you go, they're not a great Clash team, there was something like 5-0 on Cash on LAN because they just made it work every time. So that'll definitely give you a chance to make any map pool work. But I do think that what we've seen is when they're not on their good maps and when they're just shit in the bed with the tactics, they become a much worse team. Like, they had nothing on some of the T sides of the maps they lost here. Because think about it, right? As much as you might be a Nip fan, Faze was going to win Overpass and Inferno all day of the week. So they know going into a best of 5, we're going to win 2 of the 5 maps. All we have to do is win 1 of the other 3, and that's the series. And they couldn't do it. So that shows an abject failure from Carrigan as an in-game leader, quite frankly. You couldn't get 1 map. You couldn't have 1 map where you got a good read on someone, you had something prepared. So I will say that, like, at the moment, yeah, maybe FaZe had everything going right for them. All the teams played them on their maps. They never had to worry about any really dangerous team getting them on a map they couldn't play. Even if they did, they could get out of jail with some, like classic Fnatic shit where you just use individual plays to overcome not being good on a map. I do think they'll get exploited a bit more in the future. But with that said, you have to be a special team or be in a special run of form, I think, to do it. It's not like everyone can follow this blueprint, I don't think.
Yeah, and look, just to be clear, because again, there's people in the chat sort of saying, you can't bloody call Carrigan out for his stats in a superstar lineup. Listen, we didn't do that. Here's what we're talking about. Usually what happens is Carrigan don't get a kill because every other motherfucker's dead. Because Nico's killed him, Guardian's killed him, fucking Rain, who went off with over 100 kills in this fucking series because he's playing like a god right now. He's killed everyone, right? They're all dead. And Carrigan sits there and goes, well, nothing for me. Doesn't matter. We're winning. There were times here where he had like clutches that he needed to make, essential kills that he had to get. Just get your 1 frag and hold your position or just buy a bit of time. And he couldn't do it. That's the problem with the level of performance. Usually, he's going to be the bottom fragger on that team. It's deliberately, that's how he has built the team. That's how it's structured. That's how it should be. This wasn't one of those times. And I defy anyone. Go watch the maps. He underperformed. Fact. It's not even up for debate. So there we go. That was IEM Oakland. It was a great event overall. Lots of fun. Great to see NIP winning a trophy. And it's nice to have like a little shock, winner kind of come out from nowhere and sort of, it's not going to be SK. It's not going to be FaZe. It's not going to be Astralis. So we'll do some general points to wrap up the show. Immortals have been a constant topic of discussion on this podcast as they sort of just degenerate like the fucking at the end of the picture of Dorian Gray, just instant desiccation. They've forfeited all of their ECS matches. Now again, I'm going to say this, there's been this mad rumor circulating. We already brought it up. I think it was in like episode 3 or 4. Where there's been this like weird rumor circulating among industry people that a combination of Immortals having all this VC money and this whole you can't own multiple teams thing that's going to be brought in. Obviously, we all know ES Force kind of has funded SK Gaming and whatnot. Apparently, there's been talks about some deal for like Immortals to get the SK Gaming squad. And I've heard that rumor. I heard it months ago, and it's reared its head again now recently. Okay. Now, again, it's idle fucking industry chit chat at this point. It's not my wheelhouse. I don't investigate roster changes anymore. DK, do your fucking thing.
I had heard something similar.
Oh, you'd heard it too?
I had heard that the SK team was potentially available and that, it's not as simple as, they just re-sign and then it's, all that fine and dandy, I mean, never is with those guys, apparently, you never can always ensure that they're going to sign that contract with your team. Shout out to anyone who remembers that Easter egg. So
yeah. Not bad.
No, but I had heard that possibly they're available. And by the way, if you're in a scenario like you were with Immortals, you've worked with a Brazilian team, you do have, like, one thing I'll say about the Immortals squad.
You've got a Brazilian fan base, right? It's essential. Yeah.
And obviously, you definitely can get the money. I mean, these are the guys who were able to get enough money where they could have had an Overwatch and an ALCS spot, which means you can essentially raise like $40 million. So they don't fuck around. If they want to be the top bidder, I'm sure they can do it.
And as I said, that ES Force factor, with owning the multiple teams. Yeah, exactly. You have got to divest yourself. So if you can sell while your team is hot and on top to a company that has literally got money to burn, it's a no-brainer, right? Like, you might be sad to see them go. You might think it fucking sucks that we got to let a winning side go and one that
put SK do the Woody Harrelson with all the $100 bills.
Yeah, exactly, mate.
Oh, fucking all this money. And this is actually clean money.
For a change,
I'll
yeah, not bad. Yeah, thanks on that, Sam. But no, it's fucking. It's interesting that rumor has sort of reared its head again around about the same time that Immortals are meant to be selling some of their players, here and there, even ones that have sort of been in the org for a little bit and now they forfeited all their ECS matches. So I don't know how viable it is, but just overall, with everything that's been happening to Immortals recently, with the League of Legends stuff and now this, I think they do need a big win. If you want to keep that brand going, because obviously it's not the Immortals brand in the Overwatch League anyway, right? Like you've got to get something. And sure, they've got decent teams in other games, but they've got that Korean Dota team, right? As well, if I remember rightly, I think it's the Koreans they've got in Immortals. I've been following a little bit of competitive Dota lately, Just hedging my bets. Remember me, guys. Load is retired now. It's all good. We can be mates. But anyway, so yeah, I think that could happen. I think that is something that could legitimately happen. It's not the wildest rumor I've heard this year, put it that way.
Would obviously be like a rescue to all of that scenario as well. I mean, funnily enough, if that ends up, that's just like proof of how in esports, you can never tell. It's the same in life. You can never quite tell whether something ultimately fucked you over or ends up working out. I mean, obviously, if you ended up essentially in a roundabout way parlaying your old Immortals squad for the fucking SK squad, I think you probably won on that deal,
Oh, I've just been told there. Apparently, I missed it. Loaders back on Alliance, so may as well stop watching that Dota then. Fuck it. Go back under a rock for another year, lads. Yeah, sell. Yeah, I just got to call my broker, mate. I'm out. I'm never doing an international. I tell you. So anyway, what do you make of the sort of strategy at the moment overall? Because they just seem to have cut the team completely loose. They're not even seeing out leagues and stuff, right? Which.
I mean, justifiably so. If you saw, like, as we've mentioned on some of the past shows, you thought the nightmare had stopped when you knew you were going to lose all these good players that had got you to the final of the major. But you at least think, right, well, at least I can just go and get the next best set of Brazilians. No, so of course you can't. The buyouts are ridiculous, like ludicrously disproportionate to what these players have or may in fact do. So now they couldn't even make a third best Brazilian team. They were having to go to people where it's like the third best Brazilian team would reject this player and you can get him. So at that point in time, I think it's diminishing returns. It's just not worth the money it was even costing to put the team together. Like at that point in time, why have a French team? Why have a Brazilian team? The reason I said French there is because what it was reminding me of is when Titans got down to its bad times. I used to say to the owners of the team, you're not obliged to pick up French players. If it's not working out and they can't get you good players in the scene, just get a fucking other team. Get a team. And funnily enough, I even used to say back in the team, there's a Tempo Storm team of Brazilians who are probably a solid bet to going on. So at this point in time, I would have said to Noah Winston, either, if he tells me I can get an SK, yes, obviously just do whatever you can to get that team, or just get a different team. Like, if you're going to be in Counter-Strike, your team has no problem getting money and it has a fantastic brand, actually, for such a new squad. So just get a good team. At this point in time, you don't want to be gambling that you can make it up from nothing with this new set of players. That's not the position you're in the industry. So either get out of Counter-Strike completely because maybe it's better being another game, or just get a good team and start again.
Yeah, and just while we're fucking cleaning house on this episode. I don't know if I've ever said this. I was going to do a video on it. I want it on the record, right? So people know. That bullshit that Titan said about how, what was it? The Kelly cheat. Yeah.
That's why we had to shut the org down.
Right. Listen, you fucking lying rats. Your organization was one of the most fucking badly run. It was one dude pretty much just dropping money into a bottomless fucking pit and saying, something comes back up from this bottomless pit, doesn't it? It comes back up and there's more, isn't there? No, it doesn't work like that, mate. Right? And to fucking have the audacity of fucking put it all on one player who, yes.
People believe it as well. That's the worst thing.
I see it bloody going, I fucking hate that Kaylee. I hope he never comes back. He killed Titan. No, he fucking didn't. No, he fucking didn't at all. If you believe that, you are so fucking gullible. I got a bridge I'll fucking sell you, you absolute imbecile. Like, it's nonsense. That was a terribly run organization that was hemorrhaging money, and it got to a point, they narrowly missed out on some big acquisitions. It didn't quite click for them. They were looking at like some League of Legends teams, some Dota teams that were top tier, and they really needed them to come in, and then they got outbid, and then they were like, fuck, That's it. And I pissed all my money away, and nobody's bought the brand, and we didn't land that big sponsor. So we're going to quietly just, it's over now.
Here's a question I'd have, Rich. Put it this way, okay? Anyone, just try this thought experiment. Anyone who believes that Titan was fucked from Kaylee being banned, which remember was like, I think it was like beginning of November 2014, right? They as an org, I believe, died at the very beginning of 2016, maybe like a month in or something, right? Why, if your org is failing and it's all going to shit, would you have bought Scream for like apparently 150k, but it was really like 75k? Why would you do that if your org was dying anyway? You obviously thought it was succeeding and going on, didn't you? You thought you were going to build something bigger. Why would you pull the trigger on that deal, which, by the way, as famously everyone remembers, because your org died, the fucking guys from G2 ended up getting him back anyway, you absolute raged cunt. Anyway.
And also, like, just pure arseholes who watch this show in real time as well. Check this out. Already up on the subreddit, Richard Lewis said that Immortals is trying to get the SK team. Didn't say that. Definitely didn't say that. Said there was a rumor circulating that inquiries had been fucking made. I don't sign off on the rumor. I don't vouch on it. I even said get a journalist who deals in roster moves to investigate it, and said, DK, you go do it. Definitely never said that. So, Stefano Pro with your fucking King Win flair. Fuck you. You're misrepresenting me, sir. So that's in real time. So look, here's the other abstract thing I wanted to talk about.
See, usually they have a higher standard of evidence to the fans. Like, usually they only care if a troll hears it from an ex-ESL admin. Not bad. I'm making them all Easter eggs today. I'm not making them too obvious.
Yeah, it's good. It's good, man. We haven't had to timestamp anything for you. This is brilliant. So look, here it is. This is what the other general thing, and then we can wrap up the show. So there's been a lot of chatter about online leagues and roster kind of moves and rules and rule sets. And Lurpus has been going at it, and the game will restart in 1 second from HLTV, Peter, to his friends. And they've been saying, look, there's these rules where it's like you can't just bring stand-ins in at the last moment, and it's kind of come to a head, the debate, because Device has been ill. By the way, get well soon, brother. Much love to you. And as a result, they're going to have to use Zonic, their fucking coach, right? Which is a shame because it's fucking Astralis, and you've just seen him kill with fucking Dennis, and they use him Pimp in another fucking league, and they can't use either, I think, for these finals, because they weren't registered at the time. And then you've got, Liquid, for example, that we've already talked about, having to use fucking Zeus. Last time I watched Zeus as a stand-in for Liquid, there was this moment where he was hiding behind the fucking coils on Train, and he had like a Mag 7 or something, and instead of fucking shooting, he just jumped like this until he got killed, and he blamed the fucking mouse, It's still clipped, it's out there. So you don't want him as a fucking stand-in. That's bad times. Great lad, love him, but don't want him as a stand-in at all. So, but here's the other thing. The flip side to this debate, Duncan.
It tilts me, mate, that there's only one side. So I think we're going to get into this. Let's go.
Yeah. So the flip side to this fucking debate has to be that if you don't set any rules or parameters, right, we all know how that North American clique of organizations work. Let's say one gets to the final and nobody's sick and nobody's ill, but they just want a bit of extra firepower. Let's say Na'Vi aren't involved. Fuck it. Let's get fucking Simple in, shall we? Fuck it. Faze aren't there either. Why not have Simple and Nico on the same team? We'll drop 2 of our existing players just so we can get the win. Don't worry. We'll work out the prize money. Fuck it. We'll even give them a pay bump. We just want to say we won a trophy for the sponsors. You end up with ridiculous scenarios like that where you can just bring in all the fucking ringers like Mr. Burns for a fucking baseball game. And Counter-Strike ain't about that. And sports can't be about that. So where's the fucking middle ground?
No, that's what tilted me, is that the people you're referring to, who, by the way, in other contexts and other discussions would be the people who'd be the most knowledgeable, would know what they're talking about and have their history, right? Obviously, none of these people have any experience as long-term league tournament organizers, right? So, first of all, I think they're all a bit disingenuous because they won't just admit that they're reverse engineering their opinion from the perspective of, I want to see Team Liquid with this player and I want to see SK with Bolts at the major. They're ignoring that that's where they're coming from, first of all. They didn't figure out their perspective on the rule and then say, as a consequence, it turns out this would mean Team Liquid wouldn't have Zeus. They've gone in reverse. And that's where I feel like they've been inconsistent. Because as you mentioned, there are numerous obvious examples where if there is no roster lock, there could be massive widespread abuse, which would make the tournament worse. And here's the kicker, unfair. Like, in no scenario, by the way, Lupus himself is someone who has been a constant advocate for the idea you shouldn't be allowed to use someone as a stand-in. Like, famously, like Guardian once went and stood in for someone, and Simple went and stood in for someone, and obviously rocked it way better than those players that he was replacing would have. When you bring in a sub due to injury, there's no way, unless that player just happens to have a performance they've never had before, that you should be able to get a better player who doesn't play for your team, and then arguably do better. Because think about this, right? If we go to ECS finals and Liquid's allowed to use whoever, Steel, right? Why is it fair? Or make it a worse example. Let's say they bring in Simple. They get Simple who hasn't made it there and they go, you know what? You used to play for us, mate. You're still mates with you in the org. Simple comes in, drops MVP numbers, wins you the tournament. Why is that fucking fair to the team that made it there with their real roster and didn't bring in the ultimate ringer?
Exactly.
And by the way, if any of these guys say, yeah, but that wouldn't happen, it would. It would happen sometimes, and if it happens once, that's too much. That's what the rules are in place to stop. And then I'd also say, as a final detail, like, I also think that it's a big issue that you can't make any kind of sports analogy on either side, because in sports you do have a full bench of subs. So my idea, very briefly, is that that's what you should have to do. You should have to list, when you join a league, something like 4 alternates, but they shouldn't be players who are in the same league. They should be in like the development league or another league. So if I'm Astralis, I'm listing like, I'd have to pick up 4 players, Mertz, fucking Hunden, players, and I'll tell them, obviously you're not going to play unless there's a sub scenario, but if I need to, I can at least bring you in. It doesn't in any way violate the integrity of the league,
So I'm going to come back to your point, but just before I do, turns out it was Peacemaker. It was the other Brazilian coach that jumped up and down and was terrible. I am so sorry, Zeus. It's just last time I saw Peacemaker, it was that Tinder pic. So, that got burned into my brain.
Good job, jump up and down there, do the old fucking meat spin. They don't know it.
Oh, mate, yeah, meat spin's old school, brother. So sorry about that, Zeus. You're a really good player, man. Sorry, I fucked up. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. All right, okay. So anyway, fuck was I going? So yeah, right. So here's the issue you've got, right? Like, all these sides, all these organizations have tried to hedge their fucking bets with this bullshit academy idea, right? And they go, let's have an academy team. And you go, okay, right, great. So you've got these, and what they do is they do that so they can have 2 slots, spread their brand around, right? How about this? There's 4 players, 5 players just out there on a team, just a regular everyday team, a normal team in tier 2, tier 3 Counter-Strike, and your pros happen to know them, happen to vouch for them. You see guys like JW talking up like Swedish talent all the time, and he was right, called Rez being a great player over a year ago. Guy might know a thing or two about who's going to be good and who's going to be bad, right? So why not put those motherfuckers on your subs bench, say to them just privately, hey, we pug together all the time, we scrim together all the time. If there was an emergency, would you be up for playing in the big leagues with us? We think you could do it. It's certainly going to be better than using a coach, using someone like this. This way, at least you're kind of developing talent without the inherent corruption of the academy idea. And it just gets rid of all the problems. It gets rid of all the issues about, but when is a ringer not a ringer, and how good a player can you have, and can you just buy a player? Like, because that's the other issue I've got. That the organizations that have the spending power would have an inherent advantage over teams that didn't. So someone like Faze, for example, let's say they were a man short, or for some reason someone couldn't play. They could just go out and they could say to anyone else, like, let's say SK Gaming weren't there. We'd love to get Fallen in for a game. We'd love to get Cold Zero in for a game. How much? $250,000 for one match? Yeah, no problem. We're going to win that back. It's a $500,000 tournament. Money well spent. Fuck it. Why not? In for a penny, in for a pound, right? These are the issues. So I think there's got to be a middle ground where organizations can take a little bit of responsibility, a little bit of forethought, and just pick some fucking names out of the fucking blue that aren't playing in the fucking league and just put them down. Just list them. And ESL or Face It or whoever it is should just say, you can have 3 substitutes, 4 substitutes, like whatever it is, whatever it needs to be, and you can pick from them as and when you need them. But they've got to be people from outside of the competition. What is wrong with that as an idea? Why isn't that viable?
Sure. I mean, there's also the factor as well, like I don't really know how to resolve the whole issue of what, for example, the SK one's different because obviously in SK's case, it's a real player who is going to be in their lineup from now on. He's a permanent member. They've done it. It's all by the book. He's got a contract, etc. The problem is though, I don't really know how you get around whether that's fair or not. Like, should you be allowed a roster change if you haven't had him until the finals? Because I mean, there is a level to which you have qualified for the offline finals with a team. Why would you get to upgrade the team for the offline finals? I feel like that's the problem with this whole topic was the people in question who you cited were given no quarter whatsoever. There was no discussion. They just came in, they laid the law down. A lot of the times they didn't even give reasons. I mean, they were critiquing other people's reasons. I didn't see a whole lot of fucking reasons coming out of them, They were just saying, this is not the way it should be. And then...
the one reason is we all want to see good Counter-Strike.
Yeah, which we all agree with. But you can't run a league like that.
But mate, if all we want to see is good Counter-Strike, how about we just play the league and then we just have 2 all-star teams play the final? That's all that matters, right? Fuck off. It's such a dumb fucking argument to say that's the bottom line. It can't just be about that. There's got to be some consistency, some connection to the team and the players that made it there. It sucks for Astralis that device is sick. And I would like to see exceptional circumstances, like where you can go and kind of plead your case,
sure,
right? And I'm sure some cunt in esports would probably try and abuse that and be like, oh, bloody hell, fucking our shittest player on the team just got ill again just before the final. We somehow got in it. I'm sure somebody would try. But, for example, in the Premier League, right, they have transfer windows. But if your goalkeeper, who is so important to the team, let's say all of your goalkeepers got injured, they allow you an emergency loan, and it can be from somebody in the league, somebody outside of the league. They make special dispensation because it would be absurd to have to put a fucking non-goalkeeper in goal just to make the quota. And I kind of feel it's the same when you have to put a coach, somebody who was actively retired from the game, as a stand-in. That is also absurd. I would agree with Lurpus and Peter in that regard. When a coach is the stand-in, the system's fucked. There's something very wrong there. But at the end of the day, these leagues last half a fucking year as it is, which is also retarded. And that's the point I wanted to end on. But so there's got to be, the organization has to take some responsibility and just get some, like-minded youngsters in, whatever it is that aren't violating the agreement, just have them there and everybody wins. You might not get the highest level of Counter-Strike, but you get a system that can't be abused so people can just buy their way to trophies. Right?
Because people would almost certainly abuse it. Like, for example, when you said that example there of the owners that are in cahoots with them, I can tell you, this year in League of Legends, Team Liquid's team was heading to relegation, potentially going to lose a spot. Yeah. And so they borrowed one of the best players in the entire league who was on the bench for TSM, Double Lift, brought him in, and they staved off relegation. Now, if you think that deal wasn't done in some way because those two people who are owners are friends, you're very naive, because any logical scenario where you aren't friends would be, you're going to get relegated and you're a massive org with loads of VC. Good, get fucked. I hope you get out the league. I want to win all the leagues, mate. Why would I want you to also stay in the top division? No, I wouldn't.
Yeah. One of the chat regulars and a stream regular, a guy called Raiden, he says that the transfer has an emergency exception anyway.
Okay.
Apparently in ESL. So I can't verify if that's true while I'm on air.
Maybe it's just ECS doesn't then.
Yeah, maybe. But again, it should be there. There should be somebody, a body, It's great that they've brought ESIC in and things like this, but there should be somebody you can plead your case to and just be like, come on, device
here's
is
the thing.
legitimately ill,
Like, the problem with this is that they did the classic move, which, listen, I've certainly done it in the past myself, but I do now generally try to keep away from this, is if you criticize something and you say it was done wrong, If you're saying it's wrong, that should carry the implication you know what is right, or you at least have a better solution. Now, as far as I can tell, I believe Lurpus eventually came round to the position of like, he thinks it should be a bit like the major, like you have a 3 out of 5 rule, you know. And now the problem with that is, again, that still leaves you open to the obvious abuse, which unlike the major would happen. Because in the major scenario, it's not going to be that often that you could get a team that wasn't qualified for the major, but that had amazing players that you'd rather gamble over the players that you have now. That would happen in these leagues because for ECS, only top 4 makes it. So I could already see that happening. Like in ECS, SK was in a position where they weren't going to make it. You had in EPL, Cloud9 didn't make. You know, these teams they've got players that are too good. And if I'm like the bottom team to make it in NA, I'd do my best to make that deal if I could, because we'll do better than my real team would. Then you've got to consider, I'm not sure what the other guy said, the HLTV.org guy said, but as far as I could tell, he was just arguing for 0 roster lock entirely. Like, I don't know what his position was. I think he did a very poor job of outlining it, you know.
So, and this is the other thing, I wanted to end on this point. These online leagues, right? They're too long. They are too long. One of the things we learned at E-League when we did our first season, which wasn't online, it was actually a LAN anyway, but was that it was probably a bit overly long, and that it did create some issues, like we saw with the SK Gaming move. You know, by the time we went to the playoffs, there was this situation that wouldn't have arose had we had a shorter season, and, you know, there was roster changes, people using stand-ins again in the E-League. You know, and that was one of the reasons why we cut down the overall length of the season, because we're still not there with stable rosters and substitutes and that kind of infrastructure in Counter-Strike, and your league has to reflect that. Now, some of these leagues just last for fucking ever. And I got to say, I don't know who's interested. You know, I don't know who's... I will watch online Counter-Strike when I can, which is limited. And I work in Counter-Strike and need to know about Counter-Strike. And I find myself catching VODs whenever I have, like, a moment and stuff. I will say as well, separate point... all of the leagues that did business with YouTube, a company that now inherently censors off the bat any form of Counter-Strike content. Why the fuck should they get the esports audience, by the way? If it censors Counter-Strike on a VOD by default and demonetizes esports content creators by default, why the fuck should it get the audience on its platform? Anyway, you know, I just feel like these online leagues just need to fucking scale it down. Just have shorter seasons. You know, one of the biggest cancers in the industry of esports is this total hours consumed as a metric for success. And maybe you don't know what I'm talking about if you're the audience. But so back in the day, when streaming was a thing and Twitch was taking off and OwnTV was still around, and, you know, Twitch had rivals, one of the things that people like, the numbers that were important were like peak concurrent viewers and total viewers, and, you know, all of this, and then all of a sudden this number became important, and it was total hours of content consumed. And there are people in the industry that love that as a driver. They love total hours consumed as a driver. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because when you're running an online league and there's low costs and there's low overheads, the more hours you as an audience member watch, that's more ads that can be inserted, more chance for product placement. So it suddenly becomes a very sexy statistic. And it's actually driving the way we structure leagues in this industry. And it's not good for the players. It's not good for the fans. It's not good for the game. Because people, by game 40 of a fucking 4-month season, which are just overly long glorified qualifiers for a LAN final, everyone's fucking bored. You know, you're getting 20,000 people watching a game that if it was under any other circumstances would get fucking 100K or more.
Yeah, but here's the problem I have with that, okay, is like if I'm ESL... and you know how much it costs to put on a massive LAN, I don't blame them. I know exactly why they do it. As you said, the outlay, very little for how much we can get. And we can sell a sponsor. You get 1,000 hours worth of stuff, you know, you'll be on every day of the week. You'll be on in all different regions. And if you're a team, the teams want to play in them, because if I'm NRG, if I have to just only go to LANs, I'm going out every time first day. If I go in an online league, I get my 20 games played. I get to play against all the top teams. I get the primetime match when it's the specific day, you know. To certain people in the industry who aren't necessarily the ones who make all the money right now, it's a very, very good proposition. So here's the problem. I can solve it for you overnight, Rich. Right? I've got rid of online play for you. It's all big LANs and big qualifiers. It's cost $10.99 a month. Are you in? Are you in on the substitution? On the subscription rather? You might be, but no other fucker is. So all the kids online are like, oh, it's bullshit online league. Would you pay 10 quid a month? Because every league I know in sports, you have to pay to watch. You know, that's where you make the money.
I mean, I pay, to put it in context, I pay, it's quite, it's all right, I suppose. It's about $110 a year for just to have NFL Game Pass. And because
it's absolutely worth it as well.
Yeah, completely worth it. Although the one thing it doesn't offer is live games. It's all VOD. You have to wait for the match to finish, and then a full uncut VOD is immediately uploaded. But you can watch every game in the NFL. $100 a year, completely worth it. You get abridged versions, highlight reels, the complete game, play-by-play, additional stats. I think Game Pass is a really good product. I've often used the example of like the WWE Universe subscription. Yes. Last time I looked into it, $15, but you get all the documentaries, all the ancillary content, special content, and every fucking episode that's ever been of anything to do with the WWE and WWF. But you got to pay for this shit. And I keep saying this, and I mentioned this in an interview, and loads of people go, "Oh, that's Richard Lewis talking on behalf of Turner." Guys, you got to know me better than that. I'm telling you straight. In 2010. When they tried pay-per-view, the industry wasn't ready. Now we've got so much content, and with all the way that ad blocks work in, and pre-rolls and mid-rolls and all this, like all of the value of that overall is down, but you want more prize money, you want higher production value. Someone's got to pay, and it technically should be the audience. I don't know how to break it to you. And I'm not talking much,
Like anyone who says that it's because of Turner, by the way, Turner's probably one of the few people who wouldn't be charging for pay-per-view because they actually have a revenue model in place called television, which you already have to pay to have anyway. So they wouldn't be doing it anyway. Secondly, in terms of the aspect that we're talking about here, I even think there's now a logic to it. Like, for example, I think if you had a world in which you had to pay for let's say you want to replace Pro League with some amazing series of tournaments, a LAN that lasts 2 weeks or something, I don't know what it would be, then if you have to pay for that, someone else will be able to fill the gap. Like DreamHack Open now, if it's for free, now has its own value where, you can't afford the Pro League pass, better go and watch the DreamHack tournament, which is not quite as good at teams, but as the odd team that's in there, you still get some value out of it. If you complain, guess what? You get what you pay for. You paid fucking nothing. You get whatever's available for nothing, or whoever can make their model work without income revenue from here. Because at the moment, there's no real way to get around the Pro League ECS model. I don't blame them at all, just as I don't blame them for going to YouTube, by the way. Why would I go and stay on Twitch for very little because I get more viewers that I get nothing from, or go and get less viewers that I get nothing from and get millions from YouTube? Fucking hell, let me have some time on the clock. Oh my God. Like, anyone who thinks that's a bad idea, who gives a fuck what the number is,
Well, let's see how people feel if it goes to Facebook or something like that, eh? Could happen.
Sure. Obviously, also, by the way, we are the biggest cunts ever because we literally did essentially use a pay-per-view model for this podcast. If you didn't pay enough, it's not coming back. So
no, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I at the end of the day, I think we put out a good product. I think this is a fucking straight fire podcast. I think this is worth listening to. I'm proud of the work we put into it, and yeah, you got to fucking pay, right? Like, that's, it was the only way it was going to happen. I'm sorry. Me and Duncan, we got our own lives to lead, and we secretly hate each other behind the scenes. So obviously the only way we could stomach being in a virtual room with each other.
Aside from our obvious agreement that will be held for many years, our treaty to keep Megaman out of the casting industry.
Apparently,
it's the only thing that unites us, right? Yeah.
People have been messaging me saying Megaman has responded. I don't know where, but no, it's good. Apparently, let me see.
Guess. I think my guess is that he's responded. He's got the route of like, oh yeah, they made some good points. I'm gonna really try my hardest to turn it around. Hold the cameras off. Fuck them all. Fuck these pieces of shit. Keep out of the industry.
Let's just have a look. Just watched By the Numbers podcast. Well, here you go, Sam. I'll give you the tweet. I haven't heard from Sam in a while. He's probably dead, and his bong hits to the brain. There you go. Just watched the By the Numbers podcast where Thorin and Richard Lewis talk about recent events. I have to say first, thanks for being gentle on me, and also big thanks for the advice you gave. Time to get back on the horse and stop feeling sorry for myself. So there you go. Bruh. I should be a fucking life coach. I'll fix all your shit. If I could just fix my fucking own, I'd be all right.
Exactly. If you could just only life coach yourself.
Yeah, no, can't be done.
Of course, the tragedy was the only person he couldn't coach was himself.
Indeed. So there you go. So yeah, look, just to sort of wrap it up in a neat little bow. I think. Look, at the end of the day, like I think there are fundamental problems with the leagues. But if you're going to run a league like a glorified qualifier, there is some wisdom in saying if you get a suboptimal product at the end, like if you get an Astralis, that's shit, and a Team Liquid, that's shit. And that's two of the teams that have like grinded through your ridiculously long league, which you need for business purposes. There's got to be some give and take. It's not as cut and dry as Lurpus and Peter were making out, where it's like, well, the only metric we should measure is the best Counter-Strike. That cannot be the be-all and end-all. There's got to be rules. There's got to be structure. But equally as well, there's got to be dispensation when things go completely wrong. And common sense should just be applied. In Device's case, there is no way on God's earth, that they should have to fucking use Sonic. Just none.
Yes.
None at all.
That's a different set of circumstances.
Yeah.
The Liquid one, they just decided to kick a guy before the finals and now they want to have a better team. I'm sorry. So what's the penalty if we make you play without him? Or we have to play one LAN ever without our real lineup we've decided? Well, fuck me, that's tough, isn't it? Come on.
So, look, I think we'll wrap up the show there. Save some topics for the sort of special if it occurs tomorrow.
The Anders grilling.
Yeah, the Anders grilling. Well, look, I'm going to break it. Okay. I'm going to break it down for you simply. I'm horrifyingly empty. RZA. No, I'm going to break it down for you simply. I am. Yeah, no.
Which also is what he might have said in about 2014, perhaps.
Right about the time he was walking around with no jeans in a bowling alley. But so this is what's going to happen on that podcast, because I saw you say some like decent things about the Blast and sort of called a few people out, saying if you're going to shit on another tournament, yours is going to be fair game. When you have problems, because it's a tit for tat industry, which I agree with, it definitely is. But equally as well,
applies to the Blast as well, by the way, because the Blast guy himself came out on this whole topic about ECS. Like, why isn't he allowed to play? Like, mate, you've just had a tournament with loads of problems. I'd keep it short if I were you.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
But back to the
can't
fucking...
win with some people, can you?
No. Mate, again, it's these people with money. They just fucking want it all. They think the rules don't fucking apply to them. But look, I thought it was garbage. Well, one above garbage. I think it's one of the worst tournaments. So, I'll just give you the bullet points. Now, let's say we'll go in depth tomorrow, because I don't want to break Anders' heart, because I genuinely love Anders.
I'm pretty sure we can do it tomorrow. Something's going to happen.
Yeah. So, but I'm just saying though, like it's going to be rough. I think, because I think people are going to disagree and stuff. But I just thought from a viewer's perspective at home, it was really, really poor. And any 2-day tournament where you have to cancel one day, you can see what I don't know. So we'll get into that tomorrow. All that remains to be said. Just people definitely want to tune in. That one's going to be a spicy meatball. Anyway, what do we got here? Okay, so shout out to all our patrons who make the show possible. It turns out that Chris Enwin, who has been the big dog, the big donator with $380, he's been overtaken by one of my regulars.
I thought you were going to say he's fucking cancelled. He's just like, I'm out. You didn't read him out last week. Fuck y'all.
No. He's still in there for $380, which we really appreciate. But Big Hungry, a guy I know called Seth, he's been a regular on like Trash Talk and stuff in the past. Great dude, super cool dude. I try and keep in touch with him as much as I can. He's now jumped up to $400, so thank you very much. Jerky's Minion, of course, is in there. Dean Tanglis, Mateus Pietkowski, and Detlef Insomniac. The $50 Patreons, Funky Boy, Daniel Plamanov, Yordanov, Tim Douglas, Marcus Kyunpar, Sardsawar, CM FX, Marius Joris Sund, Carl Oscar Garcia Firm, and William Southern. And thanks so much. And don't forget, if you donate $100 or more, you get a question. You get a question. No one's asked any questions for ages, but you know.
I love the fact that even people who pay $400 are like, "Got any questions?" Nah. I am also empty, much like Rizza.
Yeah, scared. So there you have it. So obviously, thanks for Duncan for being on the show and being my co-host. Thanks to Sam for producing the show and pushing the buttons. Thanks to me and thank God for me. I sound like Jim Sterling for 2 minutes. And we'll probably be back tomorrow making Anders cry live on stream. So definitely tune in for that one. He fucking deserves it. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves.